When the U.S. withdrew its remaining forces from Afghanistan in August of 2021, the result was chaos and confusion. With the Taliban back in power, many Afghans were desperate to leave, including then President Ashraf Ghani. Hamid Karzai was one of the few leaders who chose to remain. The former president, though far from perfect during his time in office, has found an uneasy existence in today's Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. As women and girls there face an ongoing crackdown on their rights, Karzai has spoken out.
We are trying to do all we can to bring Afghan girls back to school.
Earlier this week, I spoke with the former president about his efforts to unite his country and why he thinks the world must engage with the Taliban to help Afghans in need. President Karzai, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let me try and get a picture of what Afghanistan looks like right now. And I'll start with, of course, the Taliban decision to ban girls from going to school beyond grade 6. That is something you have spoken out about. It's something you have discussed with UN officials. What have you told them? What are your concerns around this?
This is a very serious issue for Afghanistan and for the children in our country. Education is the foundation of a country's well-being, not only for Afghanistan, but for every other society as well. And our effort has been intensely this to bring back our girls back to school, not only at the primary school and secondary and but also to universities and the workplace. Great many Taliban leaders that I have spoken about, individually or collectively, are in favor of girls returning, and there is continuing effort even today, as you and I are talking, to persuade the leadership to allow girls to return to school. So this is a primary concern of the Afghan people and something that we are constantly and intensely trying to achieve.
You, I believe yourself, have 3 young daughters. I wonder what you tell them about going to school and the prospect of that.
My daughters are going to school here in Kabul. They're at the stage at the primary school and levels lower than that, kindergarten. Of course, I have concerns for them as they grow, as they reach the age to go beyond class 6 or grade 6, as is the concern of every Afghan family for their daughters and their sons and children. We won't give up. Individually or collectively as a people, until and unless we gain back this right to send our children to school. We want to be a good country. We want to be a country that stands on its own feet and be a highly respectable member of the international community for reasons of our own and for reasons of us living with the rest of the world. The struggle is just, and we won't give up, and I'm sure sooner rather than later the Afghan children will go back to school, girls especially.
Well, I wonder how some of that is done with the Taliban in place, so I'll ask you a few questions about that if I can. Canadian officials have met members of the Taliban on 13 occasions since they regained power in Qatar. Those meetings were held. Do you believe it is time for Canada to establish some sort of diplomatic presence in Kabul again?
Engagement is always good. The Taliban are Afghans. The current interim government is a fact of life in Afghanistan. We have to live with it and we have to work with it in order for the country to make the right choices. Afghanistan must not return to conflict. Afghanistan must gain permanent, durable peace and stability. And that can only happen when all Afghans work together. Right now, there are thousands of people leaving Afghanistan, especially young ones, especially educated ones. And that's a disaster for us. That's a huge, huge loss for a country that's already suffering the lack of proper human resources, proper human capital. So we are a country in deep needs, and that has to be addressed collectively.
But do you understand, though, President Karzai, why the West would have a difficult time engaging with the Taliban, given they are considered a terrorist organization by many countries?
Well, I understand that, but then we in Afghanistan have to live with the facts of life.
And the only way to do that is to engage in dialogue with the Taliban because you are trying to avoid conflict? Is that the best way for me to interpret what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly what we have been doing when we had the republic. That's what I was doing when I was the president of this country. Right. I called them brothers, and we had a peace process, and the world engaged in that peace process. What happened in Doha happened in the name of peace for Afghanistan. So there is the best option for a patriot in Afghanistan, for someone who wants to do well for Afghanistan, or for a foreign well-wisher of Afghanistan, is to make Afghanistan gain durable peace, and to do that through dialogue. Conflict will get us into deeper trouble. Conflict will get us to more suffering, and especially to more suffering for our children and the future generations. So clearly, without any doubt, dialogue is the way forward, and living together is the way forward, and at the same time, doing the right thing for Afghanistan is the way forward.
There are some in the West and elsewhere who have been critical of your time in the presidency, that you missed an opportunity, they say, to build and solidify Afghanistan's future, to create a more stable nation. And that is why Afghanistan, part of the reason, Afghanistan is struggling now. How do you respond to that, President Karzai?
Yes, I know. There were some then when I was in office who criticized me, but I have proven right. In my government, created institutions, laws, a democratic government and state, and engaged with the international community. The trouble began between me and our Western friends and allies on the issue of civilian casualties and the creation of prisons in our soil, and issues that affected the Afghan people, their livelihood and their lives. Other than that, we are grateful for what the West did for Afghanistan, what Canada did for Afghanistan. We had disagreements on issues, and that disagreement led to their criticism, which is normal. But if I go into more detail on these issues, it will be time-consuming and not appropriate at this stage.
Let me ask you, you are undoubtedly watching what is happening in Ukraine, the Russian invasion in that country. I wonder whether you think the plight of Afghanistan has been forgotten in wake of that real conflict happening in time right now.
The conflict in Ukraine is unfortunate. We commiserate with the people of Ukraine for their suffering, but at the same time we also remind Ukraine that they should have seen Afghanistan, and they should have made sure that Ukraine does not become a playground between big powers. Afghanistan's suffering has been exactly because of that. The past 4 decades with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan till today.
President Karzai, thank you so much for speaking with us here in Canada. Appreciate it very much, sir.
Good talking to you, ma'am. And thank you very much once again. And please do thank the people of Canada on our behalf.